Hello, everyone. I'm Krista Tomlinson, and this is the DC Animated Series panel for Superhero Fiction Convention of Heroes. Today, I am joined by three lovely panelists, so I'm going to ask everyone to go around and introduce themselves and also tell us what team they are on, which is their favorite DC Animated Series, either Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, Justice League, or Young Justice. So we'll start over here in the corner with Franklin.
Hi, everybody. I'm Franklin Kendrick. Write the Aberrant series on Kindle. For a team, I have to show it. I am Team Batman Animated Series all the way. No questions. It's a classic.
All right. I think that's a lovely team to be on. Cynthia, go ahead and tell us about yourself and which team you're on.
Cynthia Vespia. I have a superhero urban fantasy novel series called Silky Strike Force out on Amazon, and Batman the Animated Series all the way.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. And Christopher, please tell us about yourself and which one is your team.
Christopher Vallon. I write the Raptor series with Jamie Castle as CJ Vallon, and I hate to make it boring, but Batman the Animated Series is my favorite animated series of all time. Never mind DC. I mean, just period.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I kept score. It was obviously easy to do with three people, but I'm going to go ahead and just show that off there. So Batman the Animated Series is where it's at. I'm going to put myself, I'm going to spice it up. I'll put myself on the, I put myself on Young Justice. How about that? That way someone else gets a vote too. I'll put myself
I was going to say Batman squared, but okay.
Right. Yeah. Well, my real vote is Batman, so. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get started with our panel for tonight. My first question is, what is your overall opinion on the DC animated universe? And that basically just kind of includes all the cartoon series and the movies as well. What does it get right and what does it get wrong? And Christopher, let's start with you this time.
I think that DC does a much better job than Marvel, especially with their animated series. Marvel obviously gets the movies right. I think most people would agree, but with the animated series, I think all the way back to 1992, at least with the Batman animated series coming out, they've done a fantastic job. I mean, overall, there's only a few series that I think that I wasn't that fond of. I didn't like the art in The Brave and the Bold very much. The stories were okay, but I did not like that Dick Sprang type of artwork they had going on. I don't like when they change the artwork too much, or make it too cartoony, I guess, even though it's a cartoon. Yeah. I don't know. I prefer not necessarily realistic, but the darker style of the animated series and so forth.
Yeah, totally understand. I haven't watched all of The Brave and the Bold, but that is kind of a deterrent. It's very square jawed and extreme, so it looks, I'm reminded that I'm watching a cartoon. So, I totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, they were doing kind of that 50s style Batman, and I'm just I like it for what it is, but I don't want to watch an animated series drawn in that style. That's the only thing I think of they did wrong, to be honest. Most of what they do is right for my taste.
Okay, awesome. All right, Cynthia, how about you? What do you think about the DC animated universe overall? What does it get right? What does it get wrong?
Oh, I think it's fantastic. Us being all authors here, I think we can appreciate the intricacy of the storytelling and just the way that they bring these characters, these treasured characters from the DC comics to life, in these different facets. It's just, they do an incredible job on that across the boards. To play off what you guys were saying, though, yeah, when it comes down to the artwork, maybe less is more, I guess I want to say. I grew up watching like the G.I. Joes were very streamlined and looked a little bit more realistic. So if they kind of skew it too much, kind of throws you out of the story. But overall, yeah, they've done a really good job of the storytelling and the characterization.
Yeah, they definitely have a, even if some of the shows aren't always connected, it feels connected, and it feels, the storylines feel really, I don't want to say mature, that's not really the right word, but they feel developed, you know? So it feels like you said, you can get lost in the cartoon as long as the style isn't throwing you off, because it's a really well written series, I believe.
Exactly. When they have like a very good, like an intricate plot, it's, you know, it's the same as or maybe even better than some of the movies. I mean,
Yeah.
take the Suicide Squad animated films were some of my favorites. Whereas, you know, if the directors of the films would actually just watch those, maybe, I mean, they might be on correlation, but it is what it is.
True, very true. All right, Franklin, what about you? What do you think overall about the DC animated universe?
I think it's very successful, and I've loved it for a long time since I was a child. I just love how they can just drop in characters, and because it's animated, doesn't need to be an explanation of who they are. Like, you know immediately who the characters are, and you're just like caught up right in the middle of stuff happening. Uh, I love how they're always like, the movies are always like hitting the ground running. The TV shows are always like very exciting, and I really like how they can do so much with action, which I think is something that a lot of people that are not into the animated DC stuff, they like forget, is just because it's animated doesn't mean it has no action or it's like really cheesy action. Some of it is like more exciting than the stuff I've seen with CGI for the movies. And I'm like genuinely like on the edge of my seat for some of the action scenes. So I really think that they're successful in that way as well, along with all the storytelling. And definitely they have usually had a consistent like style where you can see a trailer for it and be like, that is a DC movie, and I am getting it like as soon as it's on Blu-ray.
That's true. Every time they come up with one of the new ones, it's like, ooh, that's exciting. You know, you're really just like enthralled watching this trailer for, you know, this animated show, and like, and they I think they really stick it. You know, most of the times when you watch it, you don't feel like, oh gosh, that was kind of disappointing. Like, they really do a good job. And like we said about the action, there's been several movies where I'm just like, you know, I can't believe that they are managing to pull all of this off. It looks so intricate, but you know, but it's done so well. So cool. Well, at least they've got that going for them for sure.
Yeah, I want to say the thing about the trailer I just saw for the Batman Halloween. I was looking at it going, where can I see that? I need to see that right now because it was so well done, you know?
Right. I haven't seen that trailer yet, but I think the last trailer I saw was the one when he's like in the 60s or something. I can't remember what the name of it was, but I was like, wow, this looks like it. You know, it's so funny to keep saying it looks like a movie because it is, but it's just so intricate for, you know, an animated show to really, they really get detailed with it. Okay, so since we're all team Batman, we should be easily able to really come up with some answers for this. In your opinion, why is Batman the animated series so popular? We all picked that as our team that we're on. So why do we feel that way about that show in particular? Cynthia, let's start with you this time.
So let me date myself here. I was, you know, watching that when it first came out, and I think it came out right on the heels of Tim Burton's Batman films, which were a lot darker than, say, the Adam Wests or, you know, what have the case before that. And I think that lent itself to why people were fascinated with watching the animated series, just because it was something different that they hadn't seen before. And also because, you know, Paul Dini and Bruce Timm came in with like a passion for it themselves. This was like almost a love letter to Batman by people who loved it and knew the genre and wanted to take it somewhere. There's a very good documentary. It's called Heart of Batman. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it completely because they go through, you know, how the series was developed, the very specific look they wanted it to have. And, you know, and the wonderful character development again, and you got great voice actors come in. I mean, to me, Mark Hamill is Joker, hands down, you know, and then, you know, Kevin Conroy, and this was, to me, you know, having Harley Quinn come in was phenomenal. You know, that I remember I dressed up as her for Halloween one year, and people were calling me the Joker's joke girl because they didn't know who she was yet. But to have that kind of development of a character who now you see the progression of, I mean, those kinds of things are why it's like still so popular today.
Okay, awesome. Well, you date yourself, I'll date myself. I watched it in the original run too. So coming home after school, I was watching it. So
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
okay. Franklin, what about you? Why do you think the Batman animated series is so popular?
I'm gonna jump a little bit off of what Cynthia said, where it did come right on the heels of the movie. And I remember I was not allowed to watch the movie when it first came out because it was Tim Burton was like too much. Like I was not allowed to check it out, but I was hilariously allowed to watch the show, which I think was just as terrifying to me as a kid as it was. Like I was so afraid of some of the villains. Like
Mhm.
I was afraid of Two-Face. Like these villains, like the a lot of the Batman stuff is you remember it because the villains are just so great. And they really stuck with me and like I wanted to know like oh, why doesn't he get rid of them? Why can't Batman take them down? And that's only when you grow up where you're like, he's not ever going to really take them down because we love them, but they'll go away for a little bit. But just like the villains themselves are just so iconic and they can go through so many of them because it's a TV show and you can do a couple episodes of Joker and you can have like Penguin show up and you can have Two-Face show up. And uh, to me, that's why it stuck with me and kept me watching as a kid. And also, they had really good action figures, and I could the theme song for the toy commercials, like it still sticks with me even today. So it was just like ingrained into my head. So and it's never gone away.
Right. So it really made an impact on those of us who were watching it during that first run. So, okay, Christopher, what about you? Why do you think that show is so popular?
I'm hesitant to date myself even more. I was an adult when it came out. I'm actually a little older. Um, and I actually saw it. I was at a Star Trek convention the summer before it aired in 1992, and they premiered it at that convention. So I was one of the first people, I guess, to ever see the pilot. And
That's cool.
everybody's jaws hit the floor. We were just not ready for it at all. And speaking as someone that was an adult at the time, I grew up watching the Super Friends and the old Batman animated and Aquaman animated series where they kind of the characters like frozen half the time and just barely animated and stuff. And so I was never. I mean, I loved that stuff when I was a kid, but once I was an adult, I couldn't even watch it anymore. When I saw that, I was just amazed because just like Tim Burton's film was one of the first, except for maybe Superman in 1978, one of the first superhero films to really take it seriously. And even that wasn't that serious. There was still kind of some jokey stuff in Tim Burton's film, but the series itself took itself completely seriously, and I think that's what made it so successful. Um, I mean, it pleased people like me who were Batman fans growing up, who were already adults. It pleased all the kids. I know my nephew was a pretty young kid at the time, and he loved it. We watched it together. Um, and They also obviously had great art, great animation, great voice actors. I mean, who knew that Tim Curry getting bronchitis while trying to be the Joker and having to turn down the part would end up with Mark Hamill becoming so iconic as the Joker. Um, and Of course, the writing was amazing. I mean, the writing was top notch. Like for a regular TV series, it wasn't just like little kid stuff and just throwing off episodes. They were taking it seriously. They were like
That's a
like
that's a
Cynthia was
really
saying.
good point. Yeah, that they took it seriously, not just putting a cartoon out there just to
Mhm.
with random episodes and random stories. They had a goal, with their writing. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, like
Oh yeah,
Cynthia
and
said, they had a passion for it.
they did, and the weaponry they used. I was never so terrified of people throwing gas canisters and knocking me out and tying me up.
Yeah, yeah. Some of the stuff they had the villains doing is like, oh my god, is this? Are we sure this is for kids? But yeah,
And
so yeah,
people
that.
used guns. They used guns, and in most
Mhm.
cartoons, they weren't allowed to use guns. They got away with it. The only person apparently who was ever shot was Commissioner Gordon in the whole series, in all 85
Oh
Yeah.
episodes.
wow.
But they used guns all the time, which was unusual for an animated show back then.
Yeah, that's true. And I've never thought. I've always thought about the point that they used the Tommy gun like a stylistic choice to kind of make it look a little bit older, and maybe that was a goal there to maybe not make it not look as aggressive. But I never really thought about the fact that most cartoons don't use guns at all. So that's a good point. Okay. All right. So moving on, which we kind of segue over there. Some people see superheroes in animation and assume. Oh, actually, no. I'm sorry. I skipped the question. Batman has the most series and movies, and there was an announcement they are planning a new one for HBO Max. And I'm totally a hypocrite because I'm always like, oh my god, let's give something new. And then the second they announce something Batman, I'm like, yes, give it to me. So, but if you were the big boss at DC and WB, who would you give an animated series to? And why? And Christopher, let's start with you this time.
I would love to see Tom King's Mr. Miracle series. Tom King's and Witch Drats. That was my favorite comic of 2019. I guess it was now, and my favorite comic book series in a long time. And I think it would make a really cool animated series.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Franklin, who would you choose to give an animated series to?
I would really love to see a really good, like, serious, like Batman style Green Lantern show, because I read those comics like on a whim one time, and like I had friends recommending it to me, and I was like, oh really, like how good can this be? And I was so blown away by how like vast and crazy the Green Lantern side of the DC universe is. And I feel like he doesn't get as much love as everyone else. He just kind of like shows up, fixes some things, and then is gone. And everyone is like, yeah, Batman, the Flash, and like Wonder Woman. And I'm like, no, bring him back and give him more. He has a lot that he could bring to the table. And he has a huge cast of characters that I've really only seen in the comics. So I would love to see them be animated and like give them the spotlight a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. He gets a little bit of spotlight in Justice League, but not much. And then you don't really see him, in anything else. And it doesn't matter which lantern it is. They're not really getting, any of the shine. And that's a shame because they've got a whole like world that you could build, like you mentioned, with all those side characters and the whole lore and how they got to have the rings in the first place. So yeah, I would watch that. I would totally watch that. Okay. And Cynthia, who would you give an animated series to?
Well, I was going to say we have Batman, we had Superman. It's time for Wonder Woman, right? But I actually listening to Franklin makes a really good point. Like the Green Lantern hasn't really had his time to shine. We've had all the almost the rest of the Justice League has had their own individual moments, but like Green Lantern's been there for like a minute, and like Franklin was saying, he's got a whole universe that you can dip into. Other than that, like I'd like to see some kind of obscure character along the same lines. Like I loved Hawkman back in the day. He was just the coolest. And I've only seen like bits and pieces of him, like a cameo here and there. I think probably the best one was like not animated. It was in Smallville when he showed up as part of that whole conglomerate. But yeah, let's get like a little bit deeper and find some of these characters who haven't had the chance to be showcased as much as like a Batman or a Superman.
Mm-hmm. So does anyone want to talk about why they think that we just might keep getting the same? I mean, obviously we know Batman is popular, but there's got to be more to it than that. Why aren't we getting series and featuring other characters? Anyone want to take a stab at that one?
That's how Hollywood works. There's business people in charge. It's not like the old days when there were, filmmakers in charge. There's business people in charge, and if they don't have confidence in something, they don't want to try something that's never been done before. I'm
not to cut you off, I'm gonna liken it to, I'm a big pro wrestling fan, so it's kind of the same universe. There you go. The people who are on top already are more likely to continue getting pushed because, like he said, it's a business and they're the money makers. So the people who are at the bottom still trying to come up and develop their characters don't get as much shine on them until they reach a certain turning point where the audience dictates, okay, now we want to see this. So because, Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman are established, they get all the love, whereas some of the other characters maybe fell through the cracks. I think it would just take that one rogue producer or whatever to say, hey, why don't we try this and see what happens? and it would probably turn out really well.
It's sort of, it was a bless. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead. You go ahead.
I was gonna say the whole thing with Marvel selling all its the rights to all its big characters, or back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, was actually a blessing in disguise, because that's why they came up with the Marvel Universe. They didn't have the rights to Spider-Man and Hulk and the X-Men. So when the Marvel decided to make their own movies, they had to go with their B-tier people like Iron Man and Captain America and Thor. And that turned out to be the best thing that ever happened. But it was only because they didn't have the rights. I don't think that would have happened if they had Marvel had still owned the rights. They would have done Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, and X-Men.
And definitely to jump off of that with what I was going to say, trying to explain to like somebody who has no idea what is in these stories originally to begin with, they're just going to make you condense it down, which is why sometimes we get really shallow adaptations where it's like, oh, they just took like the cliff notes of whichever hero it is and just like cram their origin story into like a formula that they've already done a zillion times. And it's like for the Marvel stuff, the obscure characters, they really had to dig in and make us and pull out the things that were not well known and make them mainstream. So like we're going to keep getting Batman because we know his origin story like the back of our hand, and they can just quickly give it to us in a montage, and we're like, up to speed. Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Like we've seen having to explain the other ones. It's like, oh my gosh, it's going to take like 30 minutes for me to be like, and here's how they got their powers.
Yeah. I thought that was a problem in the first Suicide Squad movie, where it was like 20 minutes of them introducing all the characters. Like, are we sure we couldn't have done this in a different way? Because there went half the movie, So that's a good point.
Yeah, but if I have to see those damn pearl necklace in Batman break one more time.
Those poor pearls, they don't deserve that.
Please, they should be their own character. They should become sentient and just be like, I'm getting vengeance on my
I think they have their own Twitter handle. I don't know.
We see them flying up in the alley and shooting at those people.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, next question. Some people see superheroes in animation and assume a movie or show is kid-friendly. But considering the violence and language in the DC animated movies, are they appropriate viewing for all ages, or should they be considered as appropriate only for tweens to adults? So Cynthia, let's have you go first.
Well, I don't have kids, but I was a kid, and I watched a lot of, I guess, questionable material, and I'm fine. I would just say, as with anything, any entertainment medium, it's up to the parents to regulate what their child is watching, and maybe if you let them watch these, have a discussion with them about, it's animated, it's not real. So to me, it comes down to the parents being the ones, it's your kid, you regulate what they're watching.
Okay, good point. Yeah, they definitely need to make sure someone's being involved to make that decision instead of just letting them make it on their own. So, okay, Franklin?
I think sometimes the animated stuff can leave more of an impact than the live action stuff, just because to me animation is more timeless than like the green screens or like visual effects. So I would say most of it is for kids. I think it's mostly kid, but I mean it is not one size fits all. So if there are any parents out there that are wondering like, should I let my child watch this? I would say you'll know within like 10 minutes of watching it yourself whether or not your child is going to be like terrified by it or if they're going to love it. Usually I would say the kids love it, no matter how bizarre or violent the animation gets. The stuff that is questionable is when it becomes comedy, because then it's like a taste question. So
yeah,
definitely do your research if you're a parent, and some of it can be for young kids, because I mean they sell you the toys and that's how they get you. But just pick which corner of the animated universe you want to let your kids watch first.
Right. Yeah, I think the cartoon series tend to be more geared towards kids, and the movies maybe kind of lean a little more mature, probably. So, okay. And Christopher, what are your thoughts on that?
I think most of the animated series are fine for kids. I wouldn't have a kid watch Harley Quinn,
Yeah,
I think
no.
that's a little bit too. Uh, just like everyone else was saying, it's up to the parent to make sure they know what their kids are watching and don't get traumatized or whatever. And but I think most of the series are fine for kids. The movies and the Harley Quinn series are a different story. And
Right.
you need to be careful with that.
Yeah, for sure. Like I mean, of course, going in, we knew that Harley Quinn was they marketed it that way. So, I think as long as you're even slightly aware that you might be, something that would be something you should kind of check out before you give it to your kids to watch. So, but speaking of violence, and the Harley Quinn animated series is definitely adult rated for violence and language, as we mentioned. And the show is different, and it's from the perspective of a villain rather than a superhero. What are your thoughts on this series? Do you think it's a fresh take on the genre? Do you think it's just edgy for the sake of being edgy? If you did watch it, did you enjoy it? And even if you haven't watched it, if you've seen, what the show is kind of about and the graphic nature of it, what do you think that what they're going for there? Are they on the right track, or is it just, again, just edginess for the sake of being edgy? So, Christopher, let's have you go first on that one.
I have watched it and I really enjoy it. I think they do a good job. I think it's funny. I think it's a good take on villains. Like I said, I wouldn't have kids watch it, but it wasn't marketed to kids. It was marketed to adults, and I've always thought that it was fine to have cartoons or animated shows and movies marketed to adults. Just like with comic books, I don't. It's just something over the years that's really gotten to me that people think art is wonderful and can be highbrow and everything, and people think that literature is wonderful and can be highbrow, but for some reason you put art and literature together into a comic book or an animated show and suddenly it's automatically for kids. And I just don't understand that mindset and people that still think that way, despite the fact that, especially since the 1980s, comic books have mostly been geared towards adults or at least teenagers. And that's a long time. That's 40 years ago. It's time for people to change their mindset. And I think that stuff like Harley Quinn can help do that. So I'm glad when they do stuff like that. And I enjoy watching.
Awesome. All right, yeah, that's a good point. If we've been having, these comics that have been more mature since the 80s, we're going to need people to catch up and get with the program. Stop assuming it's for kids. Okay, Franklin, what about you? What do you think about the Harley Quinn series?
I mean, I didn't expect it to be as hilarious as it is. I was like, yeah, they're marketing it as if it's like a comedy, but sometimes stuff gets marketed as a comedy for adults and it's not. It lands flat. But I was like crying for some of it. Like, I love how self-conscious it is, and it just is like, well, what have our lives become? Like, we're dealing with XYZ now. Okay, well, I guess this is just like par for the course. And I love how the characters have their banter, and I don't know, and it's well done. And I'm such a like my like high level for like adult animation is like South Park because I will never stop loving it. And it like really rose to like the South Park comedy level where I was like, I know that I'm gonna enjoy every single episode just because like if you make me laugh once and it just keeps going all the way to the end, like it's a winner for me. So I would love to see more like it. I would love to see other villains and maybe even I would like to see some heroes get that kind of treatment where it's like what we need to take away some of the like grandeur of your jobs and see like what is your day-to-day like I would love to see them do that for somebody like a Superman or like I would even like to see Batman have his own weird show like that.
Yeah. His character on the show is really funny. He's just like so frustrated all the time. So I think that would really lend well
Yeah,
to what you're
like
talking about, to have a
give
show
me
for him, you know.
give me the spin-off please.
Yeah. And Cynthia, I think that you said you hadn't seen this one, but do you have any thoughts about the show?
No, I actually I watched a couple episodes of it. Not my favorite, but I'm a very picky when it comes to Harley Quinn, just because, like I said, I saw her iteration way back in Batman, the animated series, and then when they were casting for the live action, I was like really on pins and needles. But Margot Robbie did a great job. What I did see, like I said, it was okay. It just wasn't my cup of tea. That said, I'm glad that it's out there. I don't mind that it's edgy. I think we could do more of that. There was a really, like, to play off what Christopher was saying about the graphic novels, there's a fantastic graphic novel about Harley Quinn's origin called Harleen. And I would love to see that become some kind of either animated or whatnot. It was very well done, but more extreme and edgy. So I don't mind that stuff is out there. I think there's a place for it, absolutely, and it makes things fun. Mix it up. Don't always do the same thing.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was definitely a surprise to watch it, and I tend to be like real picky, like you were saying, like I'm not sure if I'm gonna really enjoy this, but as it went on, I really did enjoy it. It just, there's so many things you just can't help but laugh. The voice acting is really great for it, and just the humor is just it's I really enjoy watching it. So for those of you who haven't checked out Harley Quinn, definitely check it out. I think there's 2 seasons and the third is coming soon. Is that am I right on my numbers? I always get off on seasons. There's 2, right? 2 and then third coming.
I honestly can't remember. I can't remember if it's 2 seasons or if it just was one longer season and we're waiting for a second season. But whatever. There is more coming. However, they split it up.
Okay, yeah.
They really ruined me with the whole like part 1s and part 2s of like animated shows.
Right, it gets confusing. So yeah, okay.
Sorry, I had a bomb go off in the background. I don't know if everybody heard that.
That's
one of my bombs went off. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so speaking of series that have different series and parts, fan favorite series Young Justice was brought back recently as Young Justice Outsiders in 2019. What are your thoughts on that series? What do you like best about it? Where would you like to see them improve for season 4, which is supposed to be coming in fall of this year, I believe. So, Christopher, let's have you go first and chat about Young Justice.
Young Justice is one of my favorite series. I think the animated series and then Justice League Unlimited and then Young Justice are my favorites. I actually never finished the Outsiders season, and I don't remember why, but I didn't enjoy the 3rd season as much as the first 2. I'm not sure what happened. I'm not sure if I didn't like some of the changes that were made. The first 2 were phenomenal, I thought. I just thought that was a great take on sort of Teen Titans. I know that it was a comic book also, but it just was, very much like Teen Titans, but better, I thought. I think maybe if they do another season, might want to go back to being a little more like the first season. The first season was my favorite. The second season I liked, but not quite as much. And the 3rd season, like I said, I didn't even finish it. Maybe it gets better after the first 3 or 4 that I saw.
Okay.
But they had great takes on the characters. They had. I know it's hard to move characters from one form of media to another, and I like the way they did it. I like the way they took those characters and kind of rebooted them for that series.
Okay. I have my thoughts on why you might not have enjoyed it. I'm going to wait and see if anyone else mentions it first before I say it, though. So, okay, Cynthia?
That one I have not seen, but I grew up watching reruns of Super Friends. So anytime there is like a series with an ensemble type of environment, it's a popular thing to do. So we'll wait and see what happens with the. You said it was like a reboot. Yeah, I might have to check that out now.
Yeah. So for those of you who haven't watched Young Justice, and it's can be difficult to watch because we know the first 2 seasons came out years ago and they were on, correct me if I'm wrong, Nickelodeon. I might be wrong about this. What channels they originally come on?
I'm not. It may have been. It may have been Cartoon Network.
Cartoon
I think it
Network.
was
Thank
Cartoon
you.
Network. Yeah.
Thank you. I knew it was one of those young channels. So, and then the most recent series that they came back with was it was behind a paywall. It was on the DC Universe app. So, and for most people who didn't have that app, and I think they recently moved it to HBO Max, but they haven't really mentioned it yet. So most people either didn't have access to it or weren't even aware that it existed. So the fact that you haven't seen it is pretty par for the course for a lot of DC fans. So, all right, Franklin, what do you think about Young Justice?
I will be honest, I watched it so long ago, I don't really remember a whole lot, but I did watch it when it was on TV. It was in like the block of lineup with like Batman Beyond and like Toonami and stuff, if I remember correctly. I mean, I haven't seen the HBO Max DC when it was DC Unlimited. I was very sad when they got rid of all that because I didn't want them to split it into two different things with shows and the comics. I loved going from the show and the comic back and forth. But I'm just a fan of in general in the DC world, how they have different versions of characters, younger versions of older characters, and like passing the torch of different costume personas back and forth between people. So I will probably have to watch this newer stuff, and then also I will also probably have to watch this reboot that's going to happen. But I mean, in general, I just love I love when the characters are a little bit younger, where they're just like thrown in, and there's like a legacy of like, well, they've already done it successfully before, and you're like, well, you guys are the new crew. Good luck. Like,
right. Go forth and conquer.
Yes. So that's the most that I remember of it. So yeah, but I will look forward to more though.
Yeah, definitely check it out. I think for me, the problem that as much as I enjoyed watching it, I think there's so many characters on it that it gets hard to keep up with all the different storylines because we've got Superboy doing his thing, and we've got Nightwing, and then we've got Aqua Lad who becomes Aquaman, and and then of course the older legacy characters, the Batmans and everything. So there's so many characters on the show that it does become complicated, and I'm not sure why they made that decision to each season keep introducing more characters instead of sticking with the core group from the first season and maybe introducing just a few more. I'm not sure why that decision was made, but it does make it difficult to watch, just because it's like, okay, we talked about these people for 5 minutes and now we're moving on to something else, and who is this character again? So that was my issue with I do enjoy the show, but that was my issue for it. And I think, Christopher, were you gonna?
Well, I think they were trying to do what they did with Justice League Unlimited. Justice League started with just the core, and then they changed to Justice League Unlimited so that they could bring in more stories, from all different characters. But I don't. They just didn't do as good of a job, I think, of going back and forth and just concentrating on different characters like they did in Justice League Unlimited, and just kind of bounced around too much.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because I don't have that problem with Justice League Unlimited at all. I've never thought that, there's too many people, because they do a good job of, focusing. Maybe one episode is these characters and they move on there. All right, well, maybe they'll take that, maybe they'll go back and watch it and kind of take that into consideration. Okay, let's see. So what is your favorite DC animated show and favorite animated movie? So basically, off all the different movies that are out there, which one would you consider your favorite to watch that really just knocks it out of the park for you? And let's see, let's go with Franklin first this time.
It's hard to choose one, but I did rewatch recently, and to prepare for this, I watched The Death of Superman, and I just loved how dramatic it was. I loved how like it does all the things that I love, where it just like you hit the ground running, you feel as if these characters in this world has existed before you hit play, and you're just like, oh, like I'm curious to see what's going to happen. And like, of course, I've read the graphic novel, famously from way back in the day of The Death of Superman, but I loved how like sort of like modernized it and added some things that I didn't expect. And I loved the villains. I loved the whole story. It's actually one of my favorite Superman stories in general. So for movies, that one I would say is like in my top, if not my number one. I just loved it. But for shows, if I didn't have to pick Batman the animated series, I really loved Batman Beyond because I liked the whole like older Batman mentor training a younger Batman.
Mhm.
And I love that dynamic where you're like, okay, I've done this so well and now I'm ready to retire. And it's like, are you really worthy to take on this costume? Are you really going to be willing to do what it takes? And of course, the young Batman is always like, yeah, of course, like I could do it. And you're like, oh boy, you have a lot to learn. So I love watching that. So those are my two.
Awesome. Awesome. It actually it took me a while to watch Batman Beyond. And the reason for it is because I'm such an emotional goofball. I'm just like, I don't want to see Batman old. And so it took me forever to like work up the emotional courage to sit and watch it. And of course, it starts off, all emotional in that first scene for the reason why he, decides to stop being Batman. I was like, oh my God, who wrote this? This is horrible. So, so yeah, I did wind up enjoying it and really, really watching. I would love to see that character more because we don't really see Terry in anything else. So I would
Oh
love to
no.
see Batman Beyond get either some other series or a movie or something like that. So
Yeah, he's just
awesome.
gonna walk in. He's gonna walk in sometime in one of the other shows and just be like, "Hey, I've been here the whole time waiting."
Right? You guys can stop ignoring me.
Yes.
All right, Cynthia, what's your favorite animated movie and show?
I gotta go with Batman. I mean, Batman's the coolest. I love Batman more than Superman, just because I never was a fan of the invulnerable type character. I like the ones who have like more to lose. So I'm gonna throw it way back and say Batman: Mask of the Phantasm is the top movie for me, because I remember when that was coming out. It was coming out in the theater, and it was a big deal because really we didn't see a lot of that. Most of the animated films were for more on the younger generation. But as we said before, Batman the animated series was both child and adult. So it was really like a big movie feel when we went to see that. And for series, again, Batman the animated series, like I don't know if you mentioned like favorite episodes. The Mr. Freeze episodes were amazing. The Heart of Glass, because it really gave you a new way to look at Mr. Freeze that was more humanizing. And I think that's one of the great things that they did with that show and the movie overall was they humanized some of these characters, which is what I love when they give villains as much importance in a storyline as the heroes do. Because if they're just running around crazy for no reason, you have no reason to like see their point of view. So Batman all the way.
I do enjoy that one. What always makes me laugh about that movie though is at the ending music is like this elevator jazz music or something ridiculous. I'm just like, what is this music? So that I always remember that movie, and like every time I watch it, I'm like waiting for that music to start because I know it's gonna make me laugh. I'm not sure why that stylistic choice was made, but yeah, that's definitely I do enjoy that movie. Okay. Christopher, which ones are your favorite animated series and movies?
Well, Batman the animated series is definitely my favorite. As I said earlier, um, second would be Justice League Unlimited. I think I said also. Movies. I really liked Mask of the Phantasm. I actually was working for a website at the time and got to go to Comic-Con and interview Kevin Conroy when that movie came out. And I kind of lost my mind. Inside I was perfectly calm on the outside. But that was one of the coolest experiences for me was getting to meet Kevin Conroy and specifically talking to him about being Batman. But I think my favorite one is The Dark Knight Returns because that's my favorite comic book of all time, and they were they stayed very close to it. They didn't change too much, and I love the art and everything. I mean, it was really cool to see my favorite comic book on the screen. So I think it'd be hard to beat that.
Awesome. I think my favorite is probably we should change the name of this panel to the Batman panel because my favorite was Batman Hush, which I think was maybe 2 years ago that one came out. And of course, they have the whole thing with Catwoman and everything going on. And it's so funny when I finished watching, I was like, I feel like I need a cigarette after watching this movie. Like it was so intense. There was just so much going on. It was so intense, and Batman and Catwoman are working together and everything. It was really good. That was probably my favorite out of all of the movies that I've watched for the universe. So during the pre-show, we were kind of talking about the animation styles and how it can kind of be jarring when it changes. So what are some of the things that you like about the animation styles, and which are some of the things that you don't care for? So who wants to, and I'll let you guys kind of pick who wants to go first on that one. Anyone want to talk about the animation styles for the DC universe?
I can. I was reading about the way that they animated the show, and apparently the backgrounds were done on like a black surface and then painted over, instead of like every single other cartoon before had been done on a white surface and painted over, and that's what almost gave it that noir feel. The animated series, and I just think I mean that whole look, even though they were going for the Tim Burton look, I actually think they did a better job of it. I think that the Tim Burton look was new and interesting at the time, but I think now it looks really cheesy, and I think that Batman the Animated Series looks just as good when you turn it on now as it did in 1992 when it came out. The shadows and the way the characters move. I mean, it was just so much better than anything I'd ever seen before.
All right. Anyone else have any thoughts on the animation for the DC Animated Universe?
I would say I really love how it's so different from what we've seen from like something like Disney or like a traditional like hand-drawn animated, where it does feel more unique because it's not totally smooth. I feel like you could almost put a real person in the place of the anime character, and maybe they do rotoscope some of the cool actions to make them more believable, but it just feels so realistic to me. But it literally looks most of the time like a comic book come to life, which is like more than what the live action movies can do. Like you can't replicate it with real people. It's got to be the thickness of the lines, the facial expressions. Like you just can't replicate that any other way than animation, other than in a comic book page. So that's why I really love the animation style for the most part. When it gets into like Powerpuff Girls thick lines style, that's when it loses me, where I'm like, oh come on, like why does everything have to have a giant black line around it? Like I know it's drawn, I know this is the main character, I'm supposed to look at them.
Right, yeah. Hey, Cynthia, what do you think about the animation style?
So I think the animation, when it's done right, is one of the things that draws me to watching these films or these series in the first place, because it has that very unique look. And when it's done in a way that it makes them look a little bit more realistic, it draws me into the story the same as it would in a live action film. I don't like the very blocky, over exaggerated features that I've seen in some of them. And then to comment on the Batman the Animated Series, that like Chris was saying, that was phenomenal. I think almost groundbreaking, and it was fascinating to learn that the artist taught himself how to do that. He was hand taught illustrator. I was like just blown away from hearing that, because it was really a unique style that I guess probably set the precedence, going forward into the rest of the animated universe.
Awesome. Yeah, I too. I love the animation style for pretty much all of the movies in the series. I think there's a few that I didn't really care for. One of the I think maybe one or two of the Suicide Squad movies. Everybody's very angular. It's really obvious in the way they drew Harley Quinn. Like she's got this like giant blocky angular face, and I don't know why that choice was made, but for the most part, I really enjoy their animation. I think it's gorgeous, and you can tell that they take their time to make sure that it looks well. So, all right, and go ahead. Is someone gonna?
I was just gonna say, somebody said something in the comments about the Superman animated series from the 40s, and I wanted to add also that that was incredible, especially for the time, and I know that they did base a lot of what they did on that. So it was a good idea to, like, instead of going back to Super Friends or whatever, they went back all the way to the best, superhero cartoon that had ever been done previously, and that was the Superman, the old Superman ones from the 40s.
Oh yeah, I remember getting the DVDs of that when it was first released. When it was like it's digitally remastered, it was like given to me as like a present. And I was like, "What? This is this is something I've never seen. I've only heard of this." So that was like the first Superman animation thing that I ever really saw that lived up to what I expected it to look like. So
Mhm. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna skip down to one. If you could add a movie to the DC animated universe based off either a comic book arc or characters, what would it be? So Franklin, let's have you go first. What would you add to the DC animated universe?
oh my gosh. Okay, this is really I loved the crossover The Blackest Night, where the Green Lantern, like this giant like plague of black rings, comes and starts infecting and resurrecting all
Oh
the
yeah.
dead heroes, and they like fight with the people that used to love them. Like I loved that. It's so dark. I don't know if it could ever work, but I would say if it could work, it would work in the animated universe. So I would love to see an epic Blackest Night with like dead Superman coming back to life and a bunch of other characters all fighting their loved ones and trying to bring order back to the universe.
That sounds delightfully creepy. I would love to
Yes.
see it.
Yes.
Okay, Christopher, what would you bring? What character or comic book arc or characters would you want to see in a movie for the DC animated universe?
Well, I already brought up Mr. Miracle. I mean, if you haven't read that series, that limited series from 2019, it's just phenomenal. I mean, it's just so good. But I think that another storyline I would love to see from DC was Brad Meltzer's Identity Crisis from the early 2000s. I don't know if anyone read that, but that was a crazy Justice League storyline that's very controversial.
I don't know that one. What happened with that one?
Basically, it gets pretty intense. I don't really want to do too many spoilers, but one of the characters in the Justice League, his wife is raped by a supervillain, and they decide to punish him, and it's just Batman disagrees, and they wipe his memory so that he doesn't know what happened.
Oh,
Oh,
my
wow.
gosh.
Yeah, so it's
I've never heard of this one, so now I'm like,
yeah,
Right,
no,
yeah.
I would check it out. I mean, this is
That's
It's,
wild because Batman is usually the one who's manipulating everybody. So I will have to check and see that one. All right, and Cynthia, what movie would you want to add onto the roster of the DC animated universe?
So I'm going to come at this a different way and get a little, I don't know, controversial. I really want to see the Snyderverse resurrected. So if they can't do it live action, let's bring it into the animation world. I just want to see how the rest of that story was supposed to play out. Especially, I want to see Deathstroke, in some way, shape, or form. Let's get a Deathstroke thing going. So that would be my take on it.
Yeah. So you want an extension of what it's already out there, or you want the whole thing redone?
Whatever he was planning on doing that they cut short, let's get it back on track and get it finished, because I was a big fan of the re-release that HBO just did for the film, and I would like to see the extension of it, especially some of the darker moments with Batman teaming up with the Joker and so forth.
Okay. So yeah, that always sounds like, how is that going to work?
Exactly.
As long as Henry Cavill does the voices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just bring him back, and then I'll be all right. It'll be great.
Okay, and so then we already talked about what our favorite, which team won. Everybody was on Batman the Animated Series. So now you have to get more specific and tell me which of all those episodes which ones are which one, or you can tell me more than one if you have more than one, is your favorite from the entire Batman the Animated Series? So Cynthia, let's have you go first.
I think I already mentioned it before, but the Mr. Freeze, the Heart of Glass, those were fantastic episodes. But also just the debut of Harley Quinn was groundbreaking, and I just loved that character from the jump. So really, I couldn't find fault with most of the episodes. They were all fantastic in one shape or form. It keeps you coming back and rewatching them. So really, really great show.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the Mr. Freeze ones because, like you were saying, it's very sad that he's doing what he can for a reason, and I think that they do a really good job with his rogues gallery of giving them these, with Mr. Freeze or Poison Ivy, they've got like a goal. They might not be going around it the right way, but they do have a specific goal they're trying to reach. So those episodes are always good because you're kind of like, is Batman doing the right thing here? So
exactly. Yeah. I always I'm a big fan of the villains, almost more so than the heroes sometimes. But like I said, they have to have a purpose. Otherwise, they're just doing it for no reason at all, and you can't really get behind that. So I like to see the different points of view and like make my own figure it out for myself. So
right, okay. And Christopher, what's your favorite episode from Batman the Animated Series?
In addition to the one Cynthia mentioned, I also like the Grey Ghost one where Adam West voiced the character that influenced one of the characters that influenced him in that series, sort of the way Zorro did in the old comics. And it's hard to beat the pilot. I mean, maybe it's because I saw it on the big screen before I saw the series, and it affected me more. But the Man Bat, episode that they used as the pilot was really great too.
Awesome. That's my choice for favorite as well. I cry every time I watch the Grey Ghost episode. It's so good. All right, Franklin, what's your favorite?
I really like Christmas with the Joker, just because it's so not what I expected, and it was like the first time that you're like, oh, like this is like the animated Joker, and you just fall in love with this whole thing, and you're just like, I want to know. You want him to be defeated, but you don't want him to be defeated because you're like, if he goes away, he's gone for good. You want him to stick around. So that was like, that's my favorite. The other one, if I had to pick, there's like a tie, is the Two-Face. When they introduced Two-Face, I was so traumatized by it, but like in a good way, where you're like, with the Joker, you're like, maybe I could get out of it if I encountered the Joker. Maybe I could like talk about, like, I feel as a kid, I was like, if I ran into Two-Face on the street, I would be done for, and that would be it. There's no talking out. There's no running away. Like, he will get you. So
he was your boogeyman.
He really was. And it was so well done. You're just like, I will never forget you. You're in my brain. We're good.
Okay, well, we only have a few minutes left, so we have two questions, but one was already answered, so I'll go ahead and go get the other one, and then we'll wrap it up. Question, it says, when it comes to the DC movies, how do you feel about the chronology? Some movies feel like they are direct sequels, but others are independent. Is this good or bad? Does it change what they can accomplish in the big picture? Does anyone want to tackle that, what they think about the chronology of the DC movies?
I mean, with Flashpoint, you can pretty much do whatever you want, right? Because
yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't really matter. So it's all split infinity anyway. So I don't really think the chronology makes or breaks it. If it's a standalone, it's fine. But when they do a continuation, it's all so much the better because you're like, oh, I remember what happened here. So we're now continuing the story. So I think that's why people love series so much, is because then you can get invested in the characters and their journey a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. And you remember, like, it goes with what you said. Like, I like remembering obscure things that happened to characters way early on, and then it comes back around. Like, that to me is always a great payoff, where it's like if they have a fear that comes back, or if they have something that they've been trying to achieve that, like, maybe like for the movies, if it's like 3 movies later, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, they really like, they remembered that, and like that paid off in the end for them. Like, I love that sort of stuff.
We're all writers. We appreciate that sort of thing.
Right,
yes,
exactly.
Like there's a plan.
Someone has a series Bible somewhere.
Absolutely. You have to.
Oh, yes.
Christopher, any thoughts on the chronology of the DC universe?
I prefer when they do it, but I don't think it's horrible if they have something they want to do that doesn't fit in. Do it separate. I mean, that's I think the reason DC's making a bigger and bigger deal about the multiverse, kind of with all their properties now. It feels like they're doing really leaning into the multiverse so they can say, "Oh, that happened on Earth, whatever." You know,
Right.
you can have those stories, but still have the main DC universe and keep the chronology there, like they did with the animated series. That was pretty much, from the animated series to Batman and Robin Adventures to Justice League Unlimited, and it was all just the same chronology, basically.
Mhm. Awesome. Okay, well, we are out of time, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Well, if I could have everyone go around and please give us another shout out about your latest work and where everyone can find you online. So, Cynthia, let's start with you.
Like I mentioned, I'm the author of a superhero urban fantasy series. It's called Silky Strike Force. The entire 4 series is actually 99 cents right now over on Amazon, or if you're Kindle Unlimited, you can get it and read it absolutely free. My website is cynthiavespia.com. That's exactly how it sounds spelled. So yeah, and then I'm working away on some new supernatural thrillers. Fun.
Awesome. Thank you. And Christopher?
So my superhero series is called Raptors, and it's written with Jamie Castle, and it's available on Kindle Unlimited also. And also it's Audible Plus, so you can listen to all 3 books for free if you're an Audible Plus member. And you can find my website. It's my name just spelled out, all one, ChristopherValin.com. And on Twitter I'm at ValinChris, because they won't let me do one long enough to put Christopher.
Okay. And Franklin, your latest work, and where can we find you?
Yeah, for me, you can find me same as everybody else. My name, franklinkendrick.com. My latest book, it came out last year. I'm still working on other stuff, but my latest one was called Super Invasion. It's the 4th book. It's the first one in my series that's not in first-person narration, so you get to see inside a couple other characters' heads, and the universe is broadened, and I really enjoyed writing it. I hope you guys, if you have read any of the other ones, I hope that you enjoy reading it.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for joining me on this panel today, and everyone watching and commenting. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We hope you had a good time. We have 2 more days of panels left, so make sure you tune into those. And if you would like to continue chatting, you can visit our Discord, and we'll stop by in there and maybe say a few words or say hello. If you would like to add any more comments to that, we'll be happy to chat with you there. And that's it. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.